Hey, good morning, and welcome once again to the Rude Boy Sound. I am the Rude Boy, DJ Paul, bringing you the Spurs sound off. What do I have on top today? Well, not a whole lot to dive into. I think looking forward to the game against Man United on Thursday is a good place to start. And I have an interesting back and forth so far this week with fans. Um, those that are Ange no matter what. It's gets a little intoxicating sometimes just listening to some of those fans and watching some of the stuff. And what amuses me more than anything else is the manager is never responsible for anything that happens on the pitch unless he wins. Seem like every time that he wins, we roll out the carpet. We started, you don't know Ange. That's a famous line for those who think that you're just hating on the manager. I keep pointing out certain stats, and you know, some of the fans are like, okay, so why don't you apply for the job? Makes no sense to me, but that's how fans are defensively, man. You look at a sample. I don't have to go all the way back to last year. I think my good friend Sava from Football Heritage TV run those stats, and you can go over and subscribe to Heritage Football Heritage TV. Great content over there as well. Chris Cowlin, I find him to be volume and more exposed to a lot of the stuff that's going on. I think he's close to the action. So yeah, Chris Cowlin, I would say it's a good place to be as well. The others not so much. I'm not going to promote any other site that I specifically don't feel comfortable being on. I used to watch WeTV, Spurs, WeTV, or We Tottenham, whatever the name is, with Ben and Sim, and it just get after a while too. I don't have any words for that, but I'm not here to cry down anyone's or tear down anyone's content and uplifting the other. I'm just saying that personally, for me, after a while, I just couldn't cope with it. I've made several comments about that, both in the chats, and I make my feelings known. And so here I am today, being a content creator myself. I have no expectation of where the channel is going to go. But one of the things that I hold myself to is that the facts are going to always be the facts. And my opinion doesn't necessarily mean that I can't change or I can't evolve with the opinion that I hold. And if I might say this, going back to when Ange first came in, is that I was all for it. I loved it. I was blinded by the front foot football. I was blinded by the charisma and the media savvy. And then I started to look at it, and I started to dig into some of the stuff that really affected how we play. And as a tactical man myself, I might say that someone said to me, like I was trying to say before, when you made comments, people are like, okay, so where is your CV? Why aren't you managing? Why aren't you coaching? We all can't do it. And you have to give respect to Ange for what he has achieved. That doesn't mean that past success is going to mean present success as well, or failure. You have to meet each situation with what they present themselves with. And so, as far as the football on the pitch is concerned, I really think that Ange is at his max. I've seen that with Conte. I've seen that with Jose for a different reason. I never get a chance to see when Nuno reaches his max. And so Poch was at his max as well. And so you can see the shifting in the tide, regardless of what they have accomplished. There comes a time when the message is not getting through. There comes a time when the tactics does not work. And there comes a time when they will tell you that they're not willing to change. And if they're not willing to change, then the only thing that is going to happen in the end is that they're going to go. And that is not me saying that. That's just the reality of the business. You win, you stay. You win, you buy time until you get to the ultimate prize. Or if you lose, you move on. You know, we are in a business, we are in results are the matrix. And if you're not presenting that matrix, fulfilling those obligations, then no matter how sweet and nice you are, you're going to have to go. I'm sorry. And so, for the fans, I say this to other content creators, and I'm going to say it again. I never want to be the arbiter of how anyone wants to see Spurs. I am never going to call a fan a happy clapper. I'm not going to be upset with a fan who doesn't see things the way I see it. We can only reason, and hopefully we can come to some agreement to disagree in a very amicable way without being vitriolic, without the name calling and the pettiness to it. It is not my job to come here every day and pound things that we know from 20 years ago. It is evident, and hopefully we can get past that. That's not my job. That's not the job of what I want to do. Everything that I say here, first and foremost, are my opinion and my thoughts based on watching the game, based on listening on other contents, based on listening to the manager, based on seeing Spurs for the past 46 years. You get a sense of what you want your club to be like and what your club has been, what it is now. And so when you look at the manager and you said, okay, well, the manager gives you 75% of what you really, really want, which is good looking football. And that is where you draw the line, wherein that football it becomes now a recipe or or design to keep the neutrals happy. But as fans and supporter of the club, we can't be neutral in our thinking and our support. We have to be partisan in how we think about the club and what we want for the club. So not because the manager is nice, it doesn't mean that I'm going to give him a pass when his tactics is not working. And right now, you will see where I'm going with this is that for everything and all the good things that Ange does, that 25% is missing. Because while I want to say, yes, a manager has the right to implement what he wants to do and make sure that is carried out based on players that go and players that come in. Right, he has a right to that. The chairman has an obligation to make sure that those facets of the game and of the club are adhered to. He's a financial guy. He wants to go out and get Solanke. That's his business. I want Tony. He doesn't give a rat's ass what I think. If he wants Solanke, then give him Solanke. If he wants to get young players, then give him young players. If this is how he wants to approach change in the culture, then give that to him. You're going to give him everything that he needs. And therefore, I'm at the point now wherein I'm saying the manager has gotten everything that he needed, including young players. I would have wanted maybe 2 or 3 senior players. I didn't get it, but it still doesn't mean I'm not going to support him. What I'm saying is that if you're giving the manager everything that he wants, and everybody like to say, well, the manager has not been backed. Yes, he has been backed. And I did a video explaining that as well. I think the question was raised by Sava, and I did an entire video on whether or not the manager has been backed. And I emphatically said, yes, based on all these reasons, the manager was backed, right, in every window. And so when you start looking at the things that he's asking for and what he wants to implement, and you said, okay, is this what the club is about? Yes, this is what the club is about. So everyone gets it. If it's even in theory, everyone gets it. from the players that are expected to come in, and then the players that are there down to the academy. Everyone gets it. And so when you start talking about the manager needs time, how do you equate time to result? If you're going to make sure that a very difficult system is implemented, you need time to implement that system. But at the same time, you're asking veterans of the club, what's spent 40, 60 years between that region and probably more supporting the club. You're asking them to wait on a project all over again. And whether or not that is fair to you or not, it is not fair to us that we give you time for you to implement a system that is, in my opinion, is 90% there. Because if you look at how we play and look at the results that we're getting, we are now down to the fine tuning of what that system should look like. And I'm not going by something that I'm making up in my head. I'm looking at the results that are happening and the way they happen. If you're going to play a certain way, I understand it takes time. You can't come back and say, well, then you don't have the caliber players when you're the one doing the recruiting. You can't say, well, you know what, the goals are not going in when you're the one who went out and get your goal scorer. You can't keep saying that and making excuses on the pitch and you find an excuse or find somewhere to say, Levy wanted Gray, Levy wanted whoever else he signs. But Ange wanted Vicario and he wanted Van de Ven. That's nonsense. And we keep doing that as fans. Again, I'm not saying that you can't have your opinion, but your opinion has to be based in facts. And no one can prove to me so far that Levy went out and said, you know what, I'm going to pay $42 million or whatever it costs for Gray to bring a youngster in. Somebody else has to be a part of that decision. We saw the same thing with Spence, and we're going through the same thing again. That every single time we can say, okay, so Levy want to bring in Spence, and we can say yes, he did that. Conte didn't want him, but we can't go back and say, you know what, Ange didn't want Gray, Ange didn't want Odebert, Ange didn't want Solanke because it's not working out on the pitch. And we keep doing that. We keep looking for reasons to move away from the failures of the manager to now fault the chairman. I'm not here to sing the chairman praises because God knows that he can do way much better than what he's doing for the club as far as the football is concerned. And so when you look at it, when you look at the things that are happening on the pitch, we have to be able to put everything in its own bucket. And when you put everything in its own bucket, in my opinion, I'm just going as my opinion again, is that I feel like he was backed. And I'm going to base my argument from that to prove that he was back because he said it and he gets the players that he wants. If you're telling me that, okay, the job is a little bit more difficult than I think. I believe I could use mid-level players and get them to where I want them to be, then that's a different conversation. That is not saying that you did not get the players that you wanted. You get the players, but obviously it's going to take a little bit more time because the league is a little bit more difficult. That is a more cogent argument to have if you want to have that kind of argument about players not being of the standard to which you want because you're the ones who brought them in. And so therefore, when it's not working out, like I said before, you can't now say Levy this, Levy did that, and Levy did that. And this is what we end up doing a lot of times. We start pinning the failures on the pitch where the manager is 100% in control to blame that to Daniel Levy. Daniel Levy is not the one who said, you know what, this is the system I'm going to play, and I'm going to prioritize my attack 100% over the defense. And every game that I'm going to win or I'm going to participate in is that the offense have to give me the results. And this is exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing wherein Ange plays a tactics, he plays a formation. There's everything that is in his DNA that the offense going to have to give him the results every single game. And when that is not happening, there is no plan B. plan A and plan B is plan A. And when plan A does not work, then he goes back to plan A, and he said that himself. Now, I can sit here in good conscience and said, when I look at the wins and see how proficient and efficient we are in scoring goals and steamrolling teams, and I look at how all of this happened. I look at how they do their formation. I look at their intent. And I see that, look, this is exactly what Ange wanted. And he gets it. Managers come out and they do that. But the league is not that. That's not the league. And when you're coming from another league where you're the best team in the league, I couldn't give a rat's behind how you get to be the best team in the league. If it's through buying, through recruiting, and through, all the things that you do prior, wherein, you're the top dog in the league, you have attained that status, and you play with that status. Spurs, as it is, maybe rank, I'm probably going to be generous and said 6 or 7 in terms of quality, in terms of ability, ranking the league. I think based on our finishes over the years, and I'm going to just use the years, just to make a point, is that I think that based on our finish overall, we can claim maybe the 7th position. Because I think all the years of top 4 and being in Europe, even though we haven't really won anything in 16 years, we still haven't fallen below. I think the furthest we have fallen, and I think I get that stats last week or the week before, in 20 years, I think we may have fallen down to 13 or 11, somewhere in that region. And that's only one time. So if you look at Spurs, since Spurs has risen up late 70s into the 80s, 90s, we have maintained being in the top 10. And then once we get up to the top 4 under Poch, we were always there. I think the furthest we dropped down was either 6th or 7th or 8th, whatever it was, after the Champions League. So we have been maintaining that position for a long while. So I think based on finishes that we can say, hey, I think we're somewhere between, 4 and 6, somewhere in there, 7th, to be generous. And so when teams are deciding that I'm playing Spurs because Spurs play this way, remember that out of 38 games, right, to every club, it's only 2 games. And they can afford to set up how they set up to beat Spurs a certain way. Now, if every team is doing that, and they're successful at least once, right, what is going to happen is that you're going to lose half your games. And that's as simple as the math goes. You're either going to lose half your games or you're going to get just a point. Because it's very difficult the way Ant sets up his team and the way how he plays tactically against teams that sit back and absorb the pressure and give us the ball, and we have over 60% possession. We don't get as much shot on goal because we keep bouncing it around. We have to find ways beyond just passing it around and trying to pass it in the back of the goal, but in the net, and we have been doing that. And we do that, once we get to that point, they know that, well, that they have us. And the proof is in this year. I'm not going to go much longer, maybe a minute or so, but the proof is in this year. We have lost 7 games, and majority, maybe 6 or 5 of those teams, they sat back, gave us the ball on counter-attack, and we have no answer for that. And the other 2 games, we may have just played bad in those games and we lost those games. I think we played bad to Chelsea. Chelsea didn't really sit back. And I think maybe Crystal Palace didn't really sit back. But the other 5 teams definitely sit back and that we lost. So that's 5 of the 7. And then the other 2 teams, I'm going to kind of like, not say much about Leicester, which was the opening game, and then you probably look at Fulham and say Fulham did sit in a bit and attack us, and so we got a draw with Fulham. So it's evident that there are 2 different ways of looking at Spurs. And one way we're good, we're flying, if the team across the pitch is doing a certain thing, and then we look at a certain way when the team is doing specifically set up to stop us from run. And that is what I am talking about. That's why I don't get into the Levy conversation and who is good and who is not good, because I want to zero in on the manager and what tactics he's using. How is he going to break those teams that are going to sit back and are sitting back and are getting results? How are we going to do that? Just look at it. The teams that we win, we blew them out pretty much. We have a plus 17 goal for in those wins. And for the other the 7 games that we win, I think what we lost, I think the highest is well 4 against Chelsea. But in every single one of those games, we lost by the odd goal. And so there is something to be said that we cannot find that timed goal to help offset what would have been a loss and get a point from it. Can you imagine if with all the goals that we have scored and we have lost by the odd point, the odd goal? Can you imagine us grabbing a goal when we're down in those games? Would have had at least 5 more points. Or so the position of the team would have been much more healthier. But we have not been able to solve those teams. We either draw or we lose. And so that has to change, and I think that comes down to being tactical. And I can't blame that on Daniel Levy. So if you look at one aspect of the game, I'm keep quoting Sava from Football Heritage here, is that yes, if you look at the macro of the club, then you know who is to be blamed. In that instance, if you look at the micro part of the club and see what's happening on the pitch, then you can't do anything about that but blame Ange. And I believe in that 100%. You got to look at what's happening on the pitch, because the manager, in his own words, said that he got what he wanted. So how are you applying what you wanted? Do you think the caliber of players that you bring in are not ready to institute what you want? Or is it just that you're not tactical enough to ensure that they can institute what you want, or you need better quality player? That's all on the manager. That's not on the chairman. The manager has to decide that, and he has to show that. He has to show that the players, when put in their proper position, are not good enough. And then I can back him and say, well, maybe you need to go out and get a better defender. Maybe you need to go out and get a better winger. But you're not putting them in a position wherein success is going to be streaming their way. Take, for example, Brennan Johnson. I have said this for a long time, and I'm going to stop here. I'm saying this for a long time. Brennan Johnson is no winger. If you go back and you look at how he plays at Nottingham Forest, he's an inside forward, just the way his son is an inside forward. But because Ange's insistence on wanting to have wider players, then he's wasting both of them because they have to travel too far rather than being on the inside. And common sense in that would say that, okay, so if you want your fullbacks to be a part of the offense, not the defense, because if your fullbacks were being a part of the defense, then you'd have brought them inside to make the midfield stronger. That's not what he's doing. He's bringing them up in the attack. So if you have 2 guys who are predominantly not wide wingers and you want to bring them inside, then that should tell you that now you have the players in 2 wing backs in Udogie and Poro that can now go play on the outside, and then you have more security on the inside, because when those wingers come inside, your midfielders are not going to go that high. They're not going to press that high. They will be in front the box, and then your fullbacks can go down the line and they can provide the width. But I'm not seeing that tactically coming from Ange, and I'm just looking at the team, right? So again, for someone who's going to ask me about my CV, I don't need a CV to explain and see that. That is evident. That's 101 football. You cannot continue to play your style because you think your style is going to overcome someone who had set up tactically to counterattack your style. You cannot run when teams park the bus. It is impossible to run with 10 men behind the ball. It is virtually impossible. And Ange is still trying to run when there's 10 men behind the ball. And that is where I have my problems with him. I don't have any other problems with him, to be honest with you. The way he speak, what he speak about, all his intent, I have no problem with it. When I look out there and I see a team lining up behind the ball and he still want to have the team running up against them, and furthermore, you see what you see, that we have 60%, 65%, and yet we're down on the scoreboard because team gives us the ball, counterattack, take their chances. And so I don't see that. I don't see anywhere where there's an effort to change that, and that is where I have a problem. I got to go. It's too much. I've said a lot, and so I just want to get that out there for another edition of the Rude Boy Sound. The Spurs I sound off. I am the Rude Boy DJ Paul, and looking forward to see you here again for the Carabao Cup, Man United against Spurs. Talk to you later.